Morning, this is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. It's 9:30 in the morning, and we are going to talk about the FY27 budget with our Deputy Fiscal Officer, Emily Bird from the Joint Fiscal Office. So we're going to get spreadsheets and good stuff like that she'll go over with us. And I will just mention that budget adjustment that, you all know the Committee of Conference signed it unanimously on Friday. The Senate is suspending rules and taking it up forthwithing it to us. So I'm not sure whether we're going to have it on Thursday or Friday on the floor, but it'll be on the floor. They're going to vote on it this morning. It's possible Emily may get called up if there are questions. It's not really that complicated. And Grady and Amy are up there. So if they recess, we may recess if she has to go up and deal with that. So that's the only thing that we're thinking about. Otherwise, it should be on the floor. I'll find out today whether it's Thursday or Friday and let you know, and find you as well as the viewing audience. When it's a Committee of Conference, it's a straight up or down. It can be debated, but the vote is yes or no. There's no amendments on it. So we will get that done before we leave for town meeting. Okay. Yeah, be nice to have that off our plate. So
Emily can tell town meeting we did something.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So we'll have things to say. So Emily, we'll turn it over to you.
Morning. Pretty exciting to start talking about 2027 more with the spreadsheets. They aren't huge yet. They're still little. Maybe the next iteration will have to have more on them. But trying to join the Zoom, and then I forgot to bring my prop. Oh, okay. So the spreadsheets that I have for you are really just the sort of high level overview of what the government recommended in FY27, all of the changes.
That's me.
That better? Okay, good.
Yeah.
All of the changes that has been proposed, sort of ups and downs, ins and out at that very high level. Most of this information is straight out of the little budget, we call it the little budget book, the summary document. There's a couple pages in there that kind of walk through, like, here's all of the changes. It's sort of restating that information in a slightly different format that will be the starting place for the work that you all will do on the 2027 budget. So with that, I will share and hand out. And so I've got 5 spreadsheets. If we get to all 5, great. If we get through 3 of them and that's enough for today, then great. We've got
How everybody's doing.
how everyone's doing.
Everybody else.
Yeah, before I get too far into the weeds, right? With JFO, myself, James, Amy, Grady, everybody is trying to get more knowledgeable about each of the individual line items in the GovRec, but I haven't been here. You've probably heard it. You and James have heard the most testimony about it in terms of what these are. So it's more a reminder of what they are, and into questions you all may know more than I do, or James will be able to help answer, or we'll dig into things more. So the spreadsheets should look familiar, hopefully. They are the same. I changed the colors a little bit so they don't have the same. In case you grabbed last year's, the colors will look different, but this is the same format as last year. So we're gonna, have a house column, and as you make decisions, we'll fill in the house column on this spreadsheet. And there's gonna be 2 sort of main spreadsheets again. There'll be one for the base budget and one for the one-time appropriations. That way the 2, we'll look at the 2 separately and make sure that one-time revenue goes to one-time expenses and base revenue is going to base expenses.
Sometimes we use base for one-time expenses, but we don't use one-time for base expenses.
Correct. Okay, so I'm going to hand out a second spreadsheet right away. So the first line at the top in the green box, this is like supposed to represent your typical base budget stuff. Right. So I'm going to hand out a spreadsheet that talks through line 1. So the base with typical changes. I'm guessing this is the only time we'll have to go through this line in detail, but wanted to make sure to walk you through how we came up with that number. before, like, as we walk through it. So I will start with line 1, which has a supplemental sheet. I will note that next time there's the supplemental sheet. And there's one line on here that I do need to do more digging on. But to the extent this is what sort of grabbed from what the governor has put together. This one, okay.
Can I come all the way around over here?
My pile ended. We just had a copies.
Oh, well,
Do you not have enough? Here.
yeah, we do now. Tom, you have
Got
one? Yeah, okay, we're good.
I have an extra just in case. I'm gonna keep it just a minute. Okay, I can write notes on it. So we call it the typical changes, but this is like the base budget. This is the normal, like, bread and butter of state government. We start with, so when we start to build the 27 budget, the first thing we start with is the 26 budget. So what were the base appropriations in 26? What did it cost to do everything, pay for state employee salaries, all of our typical grant programs, all of that? That equaled $2.3 billion. So, and then from there, we sort of calculate what the other changes would be to sort of restate the 26 base, if you will. So that in line 5. So what we do there is on line 2, and this is the one that I need to talk with finance and management a little bit more about. It's related to the Cannabis Control Board and how they're shifting from utilizing the special fund, utilizing the general fund. So we got to make that change in the sort of in the base to reflect that statutory change in terms of what funding stream they're going to use. So that's about $4 million. Then on line 3, you'll recall, yeah.
Okay. Can I ask a more clarifying question for that? Because
Yeah.
you just give us a quick review of how the proceeds shift from the cash register to the state and what the original intent of some of these funds were. Or I don't know if that's too much just for this review, but I'm just curious to know exactly what you just said. I don't know. I don't understand that.
I think that will be a longer conversation. Let me, and I don't want to misspeak right now. So let's
You
put,
can noodle on it and we can try to arrange it.
because it's a funny, and I can't remember, I like trying to keep it all straight in my head. I need to talk to Ted at JFO, but there was excise tax that went into the special fund and then it all got redirected, and then the spending from the Cannabis Control Board, right? This is where I'm like, there was.
And then the
Walk
question
around.
for me is that the original intent to me back when, I mean, in maybe in a slightly naive way, is to say that there was going to be money that was going to be used for societal issues, not beyond recovery, that this fund would be available to use for. And so it's kind of this target of that I know of a couple agencies that are going, and we can use CCB money. And I just want to be clear on what the possibilities of this are. And I don't want to see it just move because I don't understand it into some other place that makes it either untouchable, or if the decision has been made by either some other committee or the administration to use it in a way that either works with or works against what was originally intended for this money. It's something that's happened countrywide where, you know it's not a cash box compared to Colorado or something like that. But I want to make sure that if we have funds that can be used for things that are not covered in the governor's recommend, that we have access to them for what they were intended. And I don't want to spend the next 3 months thinking that, oh, there's money there. Well, it's just.
Yeah, so who can we get in from JFO to talk about this?
Ted's probably the best.
Ted.
And Ted and I will chat later
Okay.
today about like what to bring forward in terms of sort of, we've got issue briefs or we've got stuff on that we've got.
The up-to-date piece of it is just, that I understand, again, please noodle on or we'll get fed.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Madam
Yeah,
Chair?
I'm writing it down. We'll get,
I think what's challenging there is, right, there was when it passed, part of it was directed to the general fund. And now once it's in the general fund and it gets spent, right, then it's
It's in the.
in the winds.
The stream.
The stream, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, we can do more in-depth cannabis fund, where it's at, where it's going.
I mean, I just have a lot of history with the notwithstandings of the world with the property
Yeah.
transfer tax over
Right.
many years.
Right, and I know we've been doing 30% going into prevention.
Right, so if we can get a
That's
clarification.
all, that's the only part I know that's actually assigned. But it'd be good because, yeah, we passed this in what, 2019 or something like that? Yeah. It was 2019 or 2020, and a lot's evolved since then.
I mean, there was a lot of, I don't want to say promise, we don't make promises in this building really that are held up. If statute allows for other things to happen, we just don't, we don't say that it's money intended for. But I know the conversation was pretty broad about where this money could be used or what are the guiding principles of, and so I just want to be clear on that
Yeah.
before we,
We'll get somebody in to talk about it.
great, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we'll keep going on to line 3. This was, you'll recall at the end of last legislative session, we were, the legislature ended up sticking around for more than the 18 weeks that you're typically budgeted for. As a result, we added $1.5 million to the legislators. We put it in the base appropriation for the General Assembly because that just simplifies making sure everybody gets paid, all of that. But we did that knowing with eyes wide open, then that money was going to come right back out when we built the FY27 base. So that's taking this money out of adjusting the 26 base accordingly for that. And then similarly, based on the appropriations that were made, in Act 73 to the Agency of Education for positions, there was 150,000. That was really a base appropriation made in that bill that was added to the base.
I said, what must have been one position?
I think it was like a part of the funding of one position. That reflects. I can go triple check what that is. But anyway, so there was an adjusted the base based on the appropriations that were made in Act 73. So then so those three transactions kind of adjust the 26 base to kind of get you to a new sort of starting point. So then from there to get to our sort of what I'm calling the typical changes in FY27, to that we add the increase in salary and wages. So that's the annualization of the Pay Act. So we have to add in the new salary and wages that were adopted. Healthcare costs are increasing for state employees. So that's sort of across, you've seen that in everybody's budget that's come in. Same with retirement costs. Those are tied to salary and wages. So if salaries go up, the cost of retirement for the state goes up. Also the internal service fund allocations. So ADS is called out separately because there's a lot going on with ADS, as you've heard from several from ADS and finance and management. But the other internal service funds, fee for space, the Vision Internal Service Fund to operate the state's financial system, totally drawing a blank on other ones, but there's the Department of Human Resources, Internal Service Fund, et cetera. There's increased general fund impact associated with the operations of those special funds. That's $3 million. And then the last one, that's sort of our typical increase, is the increase in property tax assistance. So that's the homeowner and renter rebate anticipated increases. So those are just sort of business as usual, operating normally. These are the increases that have to get annualized to sort of give you that new 27 starting place.
So this reminds me of the ups and downs. And so I would like to know what the total salaries and wages are after you add the 28, and the total health benefits are
Across state government.
across state government, the total retirement. I don't care about the service fund, but also the total that we give in property tax assistance.
Yep.
Thank you. That's, yeah. Lynn?
Yeah, on the increase in the property tax assistance, that's like to me, it looks like that's considered like an inflationary increase. Does this ever go down?
Not to my
Depends.
knowledge, but it could, suppose.
Depends on, the tax department adjusts it every year based on what they see. So for example, in budget adjustment, we actually had a decrease in one of the ones and an increase in the other one. So it was in net zero, but it has been less than it's been budgeted for in the past.
Seems to me like people either will earn more or they will pay less or.
Well, and fewer people in some ways have qualified because we haven't changed that $47,000 circuit breaker in what, 20 years or something like that?
my constituent coffee this
Ah,
Saturday. Yep.
yeah. So it may be good down to
Just describe that, just reference.
the circuit breaker. If you make under $47,000, you don't pay any property tax. I think that's what it is. And then it's a graduated income sensitivity over that up to, I don't know what, 125 or something. But by 125, you're down to like, you may get $100 off your property tax.
Is it
But the
done-
most you can have is 8,000. That's the last I remember, is that 8,000 was the maximum that you could get back in property tax.
This is the homeowner rebate.
The homeowner rebate,
Is it
yeah.
don't pay or is it capped at 2%?
Is what?
Is it, don't, the people under 47 don't pay, or is it capped at 2%, or is that a
Good
higher
question.
number?
Maybe capped at 2%. Maybe capped
My
at 2%.
understanding was that way back when we had the rebates, remember the rebates? Pre-Act 60. Anybody remembers any of that? The issue is that there was a whole bunch of people who never really, what they did is they they had the form, same form we use now. They paid their property taxes and then 6 or 8 or some months later, they got a rebate.
Right.
Basically, they paid little to nothing. This is for Grandma Jones, who lived in her house 50 years and was living on Social Security. And it might have been that 47,000 was their cutoff, or it might have been lower than that. But that existed already. And then when they went to the Act 60, those people didn't pay any taxes. So those old
Right.
rebate people from the previous formation
Yeah.
didn't pay anything.
I don't, Chris Roop, do you have any information you can share about this since you're sitting here?
Original joint fiscal, I would just say that this is a pretty big and complicated conversation that you might want to have the tax department in for a half hour to an hour to go through the ins and outs of
Yeah.
different programs.
So,
But that increase was related to the rent credit.
yeah,
That increased cost, you remember that the homeowner rebate cost went down at PAA, that's the super circuit breaker that you mentioned. The
right,
renter credit went up a little bit, and that's the one that has some ability to capture inflation, and you got to change some of the eligibility requirements. You to make it a little bit more generous, to get a little bit more aid to folks.
yes,
So the net of that was that 800,000, but there's so many different programs that sort of interact, and with the flux of everything else happening in education. If you all have an hour,
I think we'll do this in April. I just wrote that down, that we'll, and Autumn, hopefully you guys are all taking notes on what we can do in April, and this can be added to the list.
Yeah, because this is a conversation that's in
It
a
is.
state of flux with everything else.
Yeah, it is, and I knew it well when I was on Ways and Means, but that was a few years, 6 years ago, and things have changed since then too.
They have
They
to
keep
change some
changing.
things.
This goes back 30 years.
Yeah, well,
I think it was the only thing we had. We didn't have all these other things. Act 60, and they may actually have lowered it. Or maybe raised, I don't know what they did. But the point was, these people basically, and most of the people who got it, because we had a budget that was going into September, trying to get our budget passed at city school. And we had a lawyer who was offering these forms to people, come to the open house and.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, I filled that out. I didn't know that had anything to do with my property taxes, because they got it 6 months later.
yeah, right. There's a whole, there's lots of issues.
It would be handy to know at the appropriations committee what tax benefits people are, an updated of the. what
Yeah.
tax- Because we always say, the social security and veteran stuff, it's all been talked about as, reducing it. And I'm not saying you can't have that with this, but it's an understanding now of that. If people under 47, they're on, anyway, it would just be nice to know.
Yes. So it's on the list. All right, let's continue. Great. Oh,
But I have a comment related probably to what you said, because I also see pay act here. The salaries and the health and the retirement. I would be curious at some time, whether right now is appropriate or not, to know when our last contract was and what are the terms of that contract with our employees, in terms of annual raises or whatever, the pay act. And what these benefits are and the choices people maybe have, I don't know, in terms of the health benefits. Because obviously when we're looking at all of our individual budgets, if you happen to look through that position thing, you'll see, a salary and then a benefit column. And sometimes, that benefit it can range anywhere from $20,000 to $80,000, depending, I presume, on what kind of a package they have. So I would just be curious about the details, what that contract is, so that we know what contract.
That's right.
Numbers.
and there are 3 contracts, I believe. Is that right? And two of them were settled just now. The third one, or a few months ago, and the third one is either pending or about to be or just settled. They didn't all happen at exactly the same time.
Yeah, so there was a new state employee contract negotiated this fall, winter. We have just started having conversations about the next Pay Act bill, which will be introduced in GovOps, I believe, when it's ready, and then we'll hit this committee. But yeah, we can do a high level overview of what health, dental, retirement, EAP, long-term disability, those sorts of things, what those are, generally what those rates are, and then, yeah, the contracts and stuff. So in this, we should probably have another conversation about Pay Act specifically. What is unique? I don't know what the right adjective is about the way that the state does its budgeting for salaries and benefits. So on this sheet, the increase in salaries and wages that you see in everybody's base budget is the annualization of the rate increases that went into effect on July 1-ish of 2025. So they are the budgets that you see in front of you are based on what the salaries and benefits for the employees of each department and agency are going to be on June 30th of 2026. The separate Pay Act appropriation that you make in the Pay Act bill covers any increases associated with the contract that goes into effect on July 1. So it's a little funny in that we know in FY27, there'll be a 2% rate increase for the contract that is settled, I believe, on July 1, and then a second one in January. But those costs associated with steps and COLAs that will occur in FY27 are dealt with through a separate appropriation. They're not part of the department's base budgets.
And not part of our budget.
They are, we'll get to that's my number 2.
Okay, got it.
So the first thing is you have to pull in last year's Pay Act.
Yeah.
And annualize everybody's salaries and benefits in the base budgets to reflect last year's contract.
Go ahead, Tom.
It is not intuitive.
And is that what shows up in our ups and downs,
Yes.
right? So we get the ups and downs, and it shows increases in all of those benefits, and those are the actual numbers per department.
Yes, that's the per department one. This number reflects the aggregation of all the general fund increases associated with each individual department.
So and this is, I guess, for you, Madam Chair, as well. So when the administration says target your budget increases to 3%, in essence, I mean, and I know that some divisions are 9, some are 2, there's a lot of moving parts to get to a 3%. But can I make a broad assumption that a 3% represents, or a big chunk that represents, increases in salary and benefits?
A lot of, yes. Some years,
I'm not saying broadly, because I'm acknowledging that there's many moving parts.
yeah, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the budget instructions specifically say. Some years the budget instructions say increase your budget by 3%, and you have to cover your annualization of Pay Act within that 3% increase. Some years it says 3% and the Pay Act, but that you don't have to include Pay Act. I believe this year it was 3%, but you have to, that 3% has to cover increases in salaries and wages and any other inflationary impact.
That's a key piece.
Right.
I mean, and I know it's different coming out of COVID where there was a lot more money to spend with stuff, but that's a key piece of understanding for me. Say that sometimes it's absorbed and sometimes it's not.
Right.
And if this budget proposal reflects that it's taking in the 3% and not really allowing for anything else, it kind of explains why we got what we got.
Well, John.
So there may be a year when the contract's not agreed to yet, but so it happens after July 1. So adjustment for that, would that be accounted for somewhere?
I think typically they start contract negotiations in the fall, typically. So I don't know of a time where there wasn't a contract by July 1. I think if they get to the spring, they start arbitration and mediate and all of that.
Get settled before the.
Yeah, before the fiscal year. Sometimes that's what would be the Pay Act may not be settled by the time the legislature shows up, because the contracts aren't done yet.
Sure.
But so sometimes it's, the pay act may be, start in GovOps early in the session, and sometimes it may be late. It's always the second year of the biennium. They do a 2-year contract. So what's been negotiated this fall will cover this year and next year's.
So those are all 2-year duration.
We move on.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna jump back to this first spreadsheet that I handed out for a second. Okay, so we just talked about line 2, which is great. That's the pay act amount. So that's the amount needed to fund the bargaining agreement that goes into effect on July 1. So the 2027 salary and and salary related benefit increases. And I say that because the retirement is tied to salary, right? Healthcare is healthcare. Retirement costs are going to move as salary moves. So that's salaries and salary related benefits in that.
So
That's line
these
2.
numbers don't match. This pay act of 2891 doesn't match with anything on the.
And it won't.
Okay.
It
So
won't.
I will not turn myself inside out trying to figure that out.
Yes.
It's gonna take your numbers.
Yes, and it's because you can, you don't have to trust me. And it's the difference is on this first sheet, these increases are the annualization of the 2026 collective bargaining
Right.
agreement. This one is the implementation of the 2027 collective
Okay.
bargaining agreement. I'll figure out a better way to note that in the notes. But it is confusing.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Now we know that it's not just us. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, now in line 3, we have the pension increases. So this is if we jump back to this sheet, at the
Yeah.
bottom of this sheet, just to be
Oh, yes.
fully transparent.
That matches.
Yeah, hopefully they all match. If I did my job right,
That matches.
that's the pension increases. So, and this is the increased costs in the teacher's pension and this teacher's healthcare costs. I should also probably note here that this is specific, this $23 million is specific to the teachers piece. The increases related to state employees are embedded within the budgets of those departments. So it's not called out specifically, it's in the typical changes piece. But the teachers piece at almost $24 million is a significant enough thing you should be aware of. And then the next line are base transfers. I have another spreadsheet on that one.
Should look familiar.
That should also look familiar. And this one we'll jump back to a few times, but to start.
While we're passing things out, it appears that the Senate's off the floor.
Yes, it has been
Forthwith? Okay, I texted Andy about that. Great. So it could be Thursday. Yeah. Okay, we all have.
Okay. So at the top of this one, so this is a summary of all of the transfers. The green box at the top is going to be transfers out of the general fund. The blue box below will be transfers into the general fund. And we'll jump back to this when we get to the one-time pieces and the revenue. But for now, at the top, we're going to talk about lines 1 through 4. These 3 transfers are sort of normal, typical money coming out of the general fund and going to other funds. The first one is for debt service. So we do a transfer to the debt service fund so that the treasurer's office can pay back the debt service. It's at $73.8 million in FY 2027. The next line is the capital infrastructure fund, also known as the cash fund. It's $17.2 million. And then the third one is to the tax computer modernization fund. This is a statutory transfer where a little bit of general fund goes to that special fund so that the tax department can maintain and operate the computer system that allows us to collect revenue.
Seems kind of important.
It does, but it's interesting because it doesn't apply to other,
I know.
you know,
It's the only place.
like DCF database. Anyway, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so those are the base transfers. That's all we're gonna do at that sheet right now. We'll jump back over here. So that should match 95.46. I realize there's rounding
Back to
happening.
the first sheet now.
Back to the first sheet, line 4. So now we've gotten through only the top green box, which had 3 spreadsheets. That's good. Okay, there aren't any more supplemental spreadsheets until later. So that gets us to the $2.53 billion of sort of, we call it the starting point, right? It's your sort of normal, everyday operations of government. That's,
Right, so those are appropriations, which means they are expenses. This is not the revenue that we have to work with.
correct. So, and then from there, so, and again, this next orange box that we'll walk through, these are the specific changes to the base budget that the governor called out in that budget summary. There are probably other things within the budget that you will want to call out specific. So we will have to, we did this last year, as you go through each individual budgets and say, that looks like a policy change to me, or I want to talk more about this reduction or addition that the governor has included. That didn't make this list, but is something that you all want to review, or if there's a program within the base budget you want to talk about specifically, we will start to add those to this list.
The base stuff is on the table, and we did this last year, and we'll have some free time, non-testimony time during the week, and you can start going through your budgets again. And if you find things, last year we told Maria, now we tell James, yes, let's add this to the list of things we should be talking about as we put together the budget. So
I'll quickly just walk through all of these again, not be subject matter expert necessarily on some of them. So we can either tag things as further follow-up for JFO or go from there. So the first, there's I always put an Easter egg in here, and I don't know where it is, but I found it. It says 5767. So there it is. We'll fix those numberings on the side. Anyway, the first 2 lines, or the first 3 lines, I should say, the first 5, 7, 6 lines are the changes in the Agency of Digital Services. I know you've heard from ADS and from Finance and Management about some of those changes and some of the challenges with IT funding. So the first line reflects the changes in the allocation across state government. So they've changed, right, how that allocation is working, how it's calculated. It's resulted in an increase of $10 million, but that's also netted against how they've moved things around. So there's some decreases and some increases. The net impact of that is about $5 million. And then there's the additional new general fund appropriation to the Agency of Digital Services for $9 million. For a net.
never had before, so.
Never had before. So a net impact of $14 million.
I know, it's usually seemed to
On Marty's plate there. Okay.
So that's a net positive of $14 million of general fund related to ADS and technology and state government. Line 7, the B139, this one should look familiar. This is the shift of the pilot reappraisal and listing to the pilot fund. This is what you all did 1 year earlier than the governor in the Budget Adjustment Act, but that's that line. The next 3 lines are new investments in the military department. So there's 6 new maintenance positions. These are partially funded with federal funds. So it's about $150,000 of general fund, and then $442,000 of federal funds. I believe it's a 25-75 match or something like that. So those are those. Some additional, the Veterans Cemetery Fund, they use a special fund for that. They're proposing to take the payroll costs associated with the FTE that maintains that cemetery and moving that to the general fund, which will free up special fund balance for cemetery.
Dave?
Yes, if I could just back up to the 6 positions. I'm not questioning them per se, but I just wanted to see what my understanding is. can we verify that the military in their budget is saying effective July 1, these positions are filled? When in fact, it may not be for 90 days, a normal recruitment, whatever that may be, and I'll just say 3 months. And everywhere in this budget where we see positions, there's 12 in Diva, has everybody done the same thing? And if so, then this is I get a little confused here, that's why any clarity would be helpful. Assuming they get approved, they'll need 12 months of funding in FY 28. They won't need 12 months of funding in FY 27. Should we choose to, could we consider the value of all those positions at 3 months or whatever period 1 month thinks is reasonable? Could we then consider them a one-time use because they're going to be needed in 28 when the positions are fully filled? Is that a reasonable way to look at it?
We could look at that. I think the one challenge I would flag is that if you use it for one time, then you might be okay, but you start 28 with only 9 months of funding for all those new positions if you're a department. So there's a sort of.
But if it's one time, the money then is available.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's truly
Otherwise, they would start with carry
a
forward
whole.
if they didn't.
And what we
Well,
would
that's
have
true.
to,
Pardon?
we would have to tease out how that interacts with the vacancy savings that they've budgeted. Like, have they already accounted for that in their vacancy savings, or are they?
That's a good point, right.
Thinking about that as like, well, we know we got 3 new positions.
Yeah.
We have a
if they did
vacancy
that.
savings
I'm
target.
inclined to think it may not be insignificant.
Yeah.
You look at the whole.
Right. It would be nice to know actually how many positions they're talking about. I know they're taking them all from the position pool, but I'd like to know what all the positions are that they're posing across state government. John? I think
Some of these positions are limited service positions too, so they start here and they go, that's the intent. So how does that factor into?
Well, it could still be,
It's still worth
it may be in the base, and it's still, if they have to,
in here.
if it starts July 1st, are they really gonna hire, 150 positions as of July 1st?
Right.
Don't think so. Yeah. Wait,
Dealing with a different fiscal year for the military.
the military, well, but their budget, yes, I understand that. That would be good for you to dig into a little bit about what
I can.
they're thinking about that, Tom?
Yeah, just so, again, it's something to noodle on or just to get a clear understanding. We've heard a lot of testimony about limited service positions. We know that limited service positions are maybe almost equivalent to a temp in the sense that they're not permanent and there's the definite end date. And we've heard about how difficult it is to fill these positions that are limited service. So I'm just curious to maybe have a conversation to understand better what is the theory between funding or accepting limited service positions rather than saying this department needs permanent positions, can't we have them now? And I'd just like some clarification on that, because if we're stuck in this cycle of always people saying, what is it like, we're try till you buy kind of thing? Or is it, like, I want to understand, just like I wanted to understand better the vacancy savings concept of, so you get money for limited service positions that I've heard from people in my portfolio that want to change them to permanent positions in order to keep them. But they have to ask permission 3 different ways. So.
Well, and some of it probably has to do with some of the benefits. They're usually 3-year, but they get health benefits and things, but maybe they don't get retirement,
Limited services get benefits the same as a permanent position, just the position itself is term limited. So
they would get retirement as well.
they get all the same.
Okay, they get all
There
the.
is. Don't want to speak out of turn, but we can, Amy can come and talk about it. She's the expert on it.
It can be a little bit complicated. Within each of the agencies, their philosophy on the current positions may be different than administration's.
Right.
So the question probably should start with administration in terms of what's their policy.
Yeah, what the policy is around limited service, Who has HR, Tom?
Yeah.
Be interesting to just ask them what their policy is, how they decide.
Yeah, I'm sure the first answer will be, it depends.
Okay, but that's good. And then we go from there and
Starter.
Doesn't end up funded because each agency may ask what they want when it gets to the governor's office or administration. They may put the whole things, not
Yeah.
allow certain things to happen at a certain time.
well, I know it's difficult. Somebody leaves a limited service position and there's 10 months left. It's a lot harder to fill that, but coming into a 3-year position, I think they generally are able to fill because there's also the hope that at the end, sometime in that 3 years, it'll be made permanent. But filling an empty one with a few months
They're
left.
constantly looking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay,
So that was the
there's the military.
military. And then the last one in the military on line 10 is the USS Vermont Support Group. This has been done as a one-time appropriation and the governor's proposing to put it in the base budget. At the Agency of Agriculture are the next 2 lines. So there is a new administrative services manager position at the Agency of Agriculture. And then there is a proposal to eliminate the farm operations fee and then utilize general fund instead of the special fund associated with that fee. This is on line 13 is the Cannabis Control Board. So their new general fund appropriation based on how the changes in statute associated with how the cannabis funds should be used. They're no longer going to utilize the cannabis fund. They're going to use the general fund. Line 14, and this is one of those big lines that to dig into is the increased in general fund match for changes in global commitment. So that we'll work on pulling out sort of what all of those things are from human services, but most of it is changes in caseload and utilization result from Medicaid. But there probably are some other changes to talk about that aren't sort of typical.
Yeah. And Lynn, that one's yours. That says 300S. Is that supposed to be a 0.1?
300s.
Oh, 300.
So it's what's,
Oh.
yeah.
Numbers. Yeah, it makes sense, but it's mostly, it ends up in the mixing bowl. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
cost, but
The general fund will be in B301, but the policy conversations and the changes are really all.
so
throughout
we'll
the
have
policy.
Lynn and Dave and Tiff all talking about those things. So, okay.
B325, this is the housing investments at the Department for Children and Families.
Is that part of the quote unquote housing initiative?
I believe so.
Boiling and services.
Line 16 and B332 at Dale, there's a new program for opioid recovery employment. I believe that's in the voc rehab appropriation. B338, line 17, the statewide pretrial supervision program at the Department of Corrections.
That's, yeah, okay. Trevor's fine.
Line 8, oops,
Excuse me.
Madam Chair.
18, oh, sorry.
Is that the pretrial supervision program that is not being heavily utilized? You know, there's I don't know.
Trevor can answer that.
I'm not hearing the question.
What is it?
The pre-trials.
Supervision, you know, there was a big discussion in Digger, among other things, about the accountability court in Burlington that has been successful versus the pretrial supervision that has not been utilized.
It's an ongoing conversation.
We're giving them.
That is the one, that is the
Yes,
one,
that's
there was,
one
there
you-
was the article in the paper about it not
Yes,
being
that is-
utilized.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
And Trevor's on it.
right, line 18B 345 to the Green Mountain Care Board, general fund for new positions authorized as part of Act 68. Last year. And B3501, line 19 at the Agency of Education. I know they're in later today, but the annualization of or making the positions for education transformation permanent. Then the next 3 lines for UVM, the state colleges and VSAC, they've included a 3% increase for those entities. Line 23 is the VHIP program. The governor is proposing to put $4 million in the base for VHIP. And then on line 24, this $7 million is sort of all of the other changes. So again, I'll say this is what was in the governor's little budget book. This is what the governor has sort of wanted to call out specifically as changes in the base budget. There's probably a lot going on in that $7 million, and it's really the net of all of the changes across state government. So as you find things that you want to call out specifically, that $7 million number will, that's to get us in balance number.
There's a whole lot of little things.
A lot of
that are
things
in there that at some point we should probably see, because if we're fighting over $10,000, we might want to know what's in that.
And it'll be across, everything, everywhere.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
Who would we let know? Would we let James know? Who would we?
talk to James.
And then he can isolate it if it pull it out. Yeah, thank
Figure it
you.
out. Yep.
So we're gonna be forever in education and transformation. Thus need permanent position.
That's a good point.
But then on the other hand, we would probably like somebody that knows what they're doing, which we probably couldn't get anybody for a limited term that does.
Yeah, I think we may have known this was coming. They are coming in today. We have a bunch of questions we want to ask them. Like, what'd you do with the 4 million we gave you last year? And there's a few other questions that we have.
I would just point out that in their prior testimony, agency of education specified those 5 positions they're requesting are currently authorized for limited service, and they're having difficulty filling the positions due to their limited service nature, and that's the justification behind that request for moving them to base. So they will be in it to apply. They will not.
And they've had a lot of vacancies over the last few years, so they're pretty hollowed out right now. So they certainly need, I don't know if these are the right positions, but they need some help to do what they're doing.
Given the potential for cost savings, it might be well worth salaries.
So we'll be
Job.
talking about that this afternoon. They're coming in at 2, I think. I can't remember. Okay. All right.
Right, so those are the appropriation changes. The next, on lines 27 and 28, these are the statutory obligations to fill up the reserves. So line 27 is to the budget stabilization reserve. So by statute, the budget stabilization reserve is supposed to be at 5% of prior year appropriations. So to bring the stabilization reserve up to the prior year appropriation amount, we need to move $9 million into the stabilization reserve in 2027. And then the reserve in the 2753rd, this is based on the projected liability of the 27th payroll and the 53rd week of Medicaid that occur every roughly 6 years for the 53rd week of Medicaid and every 12 years for the 27th payroll. I can't remember, one of them is coming up. I think the 53rd week of Medicaid is coming up soon, so. Possibly the 28th.
But we always, it is what it is. I thought we just paid one of them a couple of years ago, but
It is what it is.
maybe one of them we did and the other one's coming.
The 53rd week is either every 4 or 6 years, depending on how many leap years are in between.
So it's
One payment
always,
has- and the
it's
next
always a leap year. Yes, that's right. It's always a leap year, the year of a presidential election.
Yeah.
So just so you know, so 2028 will be the next leap year and the last was 2024. That's how I remember it.
So it'll be an even number of years.
That's a fun fact. That's a factoid. Is that a factoid?
Trivia kind of.
That could win you a lot of money on Jeopardy or.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, now you all know it too. So when you all get on Jeopardy, you are free to use that. Okay. John, go ahead.
Just remind us what the 2753 is.
Sure, the 2753rd reserve was set up.
That's the,
Yeah, it was set up to anticipate the liability associated with the 27th payroll and a 53rd
50.
Medicaid payment,
Okay.
rather than have
Write
to
that down.
scramble and find,
Which happened once. Yeah.
enough money to cover a pay period and a Medicaid payment. This
Completely.
reserves against
History
liabilities.
Go ahead to explain. Tell her
Well,
about it.
this happened the year that Mitzi, for the 2 years, that Mitzi was chair of appropriations.
Because we didn't used to do it.
We didn't used to do that. They used to, whenever often, you'd get an extra $30 million or whatever you had to have.
Wow.
And she got the bright idea of somebody put a plug in her ear, I don't know, whatever.
And
That's what
We
happened.
Set up that separate fund.
I
Yeah.
remember Janine to remind everybody that that was coming.
Right, right.
I thought it had been around for a lot longer.
No,
It makes so
no.
much
Not
sense.
that, yeah.
Did they do it in BAA before that? They do it in BAA?
I guess they must have. Well, you could anticipate it a year ahead, knowing that it was happening, but you'd have to put a big chunk of money away.
I think that was one of those years when we really didn't have a lot of money and we really had a hard time finding that.
And maybe, so
We
maybe
gotta do
that's
this.
why she said, look, no, we don't need to do it this way, we need to start saving for this.
Right. It's a lot better to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
think about if your own finances and you suddenly had to
Yeah, these
spend a $30 million expense that you weren't expecting. Or 30,000 in this case.
Sure.
Yikes. Okay.
Okay. So those are the total, changes to the reserves and appropriations. We go to line 30, that's where if there are other bills, that come through that have
31 has
appropriations,
other bills,
we'll
but
add them there.
32, 33, so.
Sorry.
And then if we go down to line 36, for the revenue. This is pretty straightforward, but we've got $2.53 billion from the revenue forecast adopted by the emergency board in January.
That was the January one. Okay.
Additional funds from the property transfer tax, so a component of the property transfer tax ends up in the general fund. And then direct applications, so money transferred from other special funds into the general fund. Do you want to jump back
Yeah.
to this spreadsheet that I gave you earlier that had the base transfers on it? On the bottom, it has the summary of direct acts. To the general fund. So most of these are typical transfers to and from the general fund on an annual basis. There's typically about $4.6 million from the AHS Earned Federal Receipts Fund that goes to the general fund. We anticipate about $2 million of settlement funds from the Attorney General's office. Line 11, 12, and 14 are the transfers from the Department of Financial Regulation special funds, so the insurance regulatory fund, the securities regulatory fund, and then the captives fund. It appears that the captives fund actually needs a little bit of general fund, so that's an actual decrease in it.
A big deal.
I think last year it was the same. I think last year we carried them as one big net number, and this year thought it would be better to.
Yeah, because I usually think of it as we get about 66 million from DFR.
Yeah.
And I think if you add all those up,
That's
that's around where we are.
Yep. The unclaimed property fund. So there's a component that gets transferred to the general fund on line 13. On line 15, funds from sport wagering, and 16 money from liquor control. Brings us to $1.8 million coming from other funds transferred to the general fund.
And just confirm that lottery proceeds are transferred to the education fund, but sports wagering is not.
Correct.
Which is why we don't see lottery on here. We'll see it on the education fund outlook. That's a good reminder.
It's just,
Yep.
it's just whatever it is, what it is.
So if we put all those together, the total base revenue, $2.64 billion. Yeah. Leaves a difference between base appropriations and base revenue of about $31 million, 30.9 million. Those funds are used to cover one-time appropriations. So this will carry over onto the next spreadsheet.
So you did not carry the additional property transfer tax into the House. Is that because we have to agree?
Oh, I should have done that.
That should be there, right?
Yes.
So those two numbers should really be the same.
Yep.
Okay,
On the bottom of this.
Yep.
yes.
I mean, you could not withstand it or not do that, but I don't know why you would.
Right. No, we
But
kind of need
You
to.
could do, it's your budget.
Wait,
Where does the 30.94 million come from?
That's the difference between line 35 and line 44. Line 35 is gonna be your total base spending. Line 44 will be your total base sources.
So it's sort of uses and sources, as opposed to sources. Okay,
There's only 30 million left to cover the 200 million of requests that we received.
so far.
The other, right.
Well, that's assuming we want to agree with all the things that are up top,
I know.
but yeah, we
It's
don't.
the framework of where we are.
Yes, where we are at the moment. And governor used all of that money in his one-time appropriations.
Yes.
I can't remember when or how long you had.
I don't know either. Hang on a second. No, we aren't having the walkthrough till 11, so why
Oh,
don't we
great.
go till 10:45 and then we'll take a break.
Okay, I think we can do that. Okay, so that
We'll get you
means I
back.
have to hand out another spreadsheet.
Goody.
Maybe we can get through all of them. All right, this should also look familiar. This is gonna be the one times spreadsheet. I'm gonna hand out both.
Gonna hand them both out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's the first line on the next.
Thank you for the larger font.
Yeah. As we start, the paper will get bigger as we start adding rows.
I call this the AARP fund.
Thank you.
Okay, so unlike the other, so the base sheet, we start with all of the spending and then show you what revenue is available. On the one-time sheet, we go the opposite. Here is all the revenue available for one times, and then here's how it gets spent. So at the first line on the one-time sheet, this one with the blues and purples on it, the first line is reversions from prior year appropriations. And those are on this orange sheet. This is a summary of all the reversions that the governor has booked
Right.
as part of his budget.
It's not. There's, when the carry forward report that we have, I'll have to go back and look and see if they actually showed the reversions as well that they're proposing here or not. I think they may not. So you'll have to look at that for your carry forward report.
And I am not prepared to speak to these reversions individually, just wanted to give you, this is what they all are.
And those who have it in your portfolio will be checking what some of these things are.
So there's $9.5 million of reversions anticipated as part of the 27 build. And then on the next line, the governor is proposing unreserving $30 million that was set aside in the FY 2026 budget as one-time funds reserved for property tax relief or other needs as identified.
So this is a reminder, we had a 50 million, a 30 million, and a 30 million. And the 50 and the first 30 were related to federal funds. And the second 30 was for a whole lot of other things as well. So that's the second 30 that he's proposing to unreserve.
Yep. The next line, line 3, are the funds carried forward from FY 26. This number should look familiar from the budget adjustment conversations. And if you have those old budget adjustment sheets, there was $74.91 million on the bottom line of FY 26 to be utilized in FY 27. So that's where this money shows.
But he had wanted in the BAA to guarantee it should go to the ed fund. And we held off and just continued to carry forward to the budget where we deal with it. Okay.
And then on line 4, that number should also look familiar because it's at the bottom of the sheet we just went through, is the 30.9 million from the base that's used for a one-time appropriation.
Right.
That number will change as your decisions around base appropriations change, that balance from the bottom line number will change. So the governor has utilized $145 million of one-time funds in the FY 27 budget. We go down to the blue section. These are the one-time appropriations that are proposed by the governor. On line 5, the continuation of the Ideal Vermont program. Line 6 is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission appropriation. I believe this is the last year of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
So that's what I wanted to mention. It's appropriate at one time because it ends in December, I think. Okay.
In line 7, at the Department of Vermont Health Access, there's $300,000 for costs above other HR1 federal grants. This one I need to do a little bit more.
I don't know.
It's not a great explanation. It's related to the Fed changes that happened at the federal level and the state needing to cover some of those additional costs. And then in DEVA, there's $2 million appropriated for provider stabilization grants. Line 9 at the Department for Children and Families, $15 million for the temporary emergency housing proposal. Line 10 at the Department for Children and Families, funding for the temporary secure treatment facility for youth. And then in line 11, another appropriation to the Department for Children and Families, the housing proposal and startup costs for new shelters for $6 million. Line 12 to the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, $500,000 for VOREC grants for outdoor recreation. Something. I can't remember what the E and the C stand for. On line 13, to the Department for Housing and Community Development, funding for the MPER, or the Manufactured Home Improvement Program. And then on line 14, to the Department for Economic Development, funding for the Canadian International Economic Development Partnership. So that is a total of almost $30 million worth of one-time appropriations. I'll just note that this list is a lot shorter than it has been in the last several years. So then line 16, 17, and 18, if and when there are other bills that require one-time appropriations, that's where we will carry them. And then on line 20, we have one-time transfers. So the governor has proposed to put $500,000 into a mobile radio replacement fund for the Department of Public Safety. You'll recall there's a proposal to move the motor vehicle purchase and use tax. The governor proposed to use $10 million of general fund to reduce the purchase and use tax going to the education fund by $10 million and move it to the transportation fund, and then take general funds and move it to the education fund to keep the education fund whole. And then the last line on line 23 is the governor's proposal amount to transfer from the general fund to the education fund for property tax relief at almost $105 million. So total transfers are 115 million. When you add that to in line 19, the one-time appropriations before transfers, your revenue equals expenses, and the budget is in balance with all resources utilized.
So the governor has used all of available resources. This assumes there are no bills that have any money associated with them. We're going to start hearing bills today. Some will be easy because they aren't general fund, or easier maybe. I don't know, that's easy, but will not involve general fund. But like last year, but with a whole lot less money, every time we do something over here, we have to take away something over here. Which is why it's so important to look at your carry forward, to look at what is being proposed even in the base, to figure out where the sofa cushions are in your areas that maybe we can do some things. I know some of you are already thinking in very creative ways, and I know our committees are trying to think in creative ways also about what they want and what they want to do. And maybe there are some programs that they're familiar with that they don't think should be continued that are proposed to be continued. So there may be some money there. I think we've all known this is going to be a hard year, and I think we're seeing it right here in 4 spreadsheets, or 5, or however many, 5. So it's, and we so far have only 203 million in requests. Doesn't include all the other ones that we're still getting. We'll get from committees. We're going to get from, we have gotten, but James hasn't put it all together yet, from Attorney General, Ethics Commission, states attorneys, on and on and on. So here we are.
Here we are.
This is our job. And we'll get through it. We'll get through it, but it's just not going to be a very easy year. And restart. Dave, that's.
Apologize if we covered it and I missed it. Where does the 50 million, the 30 million and the 30 million, what's left of it? Where does that show up?
It won't show up anywhere in here because it's FY 26 appropriations. So the 30 million is still reserved, so the two $30 million appropriations, one of the 30 millions is still reserved in the general fund. The second 30 million, the governor has language that unreserves it.
Yep.
Back out. The
50.
what's left of the 50, right, we have to net the amount that was transferred for SNAP benefits by the emergency board. Sits in that one-time appropriation until you all revert it or designate it for other.
Is somebody saving that for something that,
Well, so.
which is
we're gonna-
fine, I just wanted to.
Section 8 housing is one of the things that's come up, and we didn't put a specific dollar amount in the budget adjustment, but there's the 50 million, that's where the 50 million is where the money would come from for any Section 8 housing that we choose to do, that the emergency board or the General Assembly chooses to do. The other thing I would say is, and I'm gonna use an Emily metaphor here, we're in the first quarter of this administration in Washington. So we got 3 more years. I don't know what that's gonna mean. And so part of our intent last year in reserving those funds was to be able to respond to changes that come out of Washington. And some have come out and some still haven't. And we, so there's a reason to reserve some of that. At least, so I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the number is. But I would think it would be very irresponsible for us to say, oh, look, we have this $80 million or this $70 million, whatever the heck it
There
is.
it is, yeah.
Because we're going to be in tough times for a while. This is the first year of several. 28 could be harder than this year. This year's looking pretty darn hard. So I want us to be careful about what we decide to spend our money on.
Right.
Because what are the unintended or longer term consequences of what we do now?
We're always careful, right?
We all try to be, but this is just a harder year than we've had in the last 6.
I understand.
John?
We're hearing from the federal delegation today,
Yes,
but they've been working.
Yeah.
So that might help.
Yeah.
balance some
Right.
things, perhaps.
well, that was one of the sofa cushions I thought we could look under. So, I think everybody's trying to be creative, and if there's stuff that they're able to do that are close enough, and what's gonna be good enough this year? We're gonna get. Yeah,
No, not never, but no
Right.
this year.
Maureen?
Can you just remind me again, what are the parameters around that other 30 million that we have reserved? Not what the
Not what the
governor
governor-
has undone.
It was also specifically related to federal funds.
Was it?
Yes, it did not include, so the first 50 was actually appropriated to the emergency administration for the e-board to use.
Right.
The second 30 was reserved for the General Assembly to make decisions around federal flood related issues.
Okay, but it was still related to federal.
Yes, they both were.
Issues.
And then the last 30, we said, okay, we think we've done enough for federal for this point, so now we can use it for other stuff, including property, housing, property tax relief, and other things that benefit Vermonters. We can
The
find the
last 30,
contingent, yeah,
right,
the last
right.
30. Wayne?
I'm nervous, I've been nervous right along about whether or not we've dotted all of our i's and crossed our t's with that federal money. Not worried about a few thousand, we have an audited finding, as you know, I'm not gonna, but if something were to come down, we will end up having to revert or get back $200 or $300 million, we can suck in pond water.
Yep.
That's what makes me nervous.
Yeah, well, and the uncertainty that's coming out and where clawbacks could potentially happen or not happen is things change on a regular basis. Nolan is looking at the Rural Health Transformation Grant and trying to understand the 38 projects. And those projects are still in flux. There's, they put something down and they're still under discussion with the folks in Washington. So you're looking at it at a point in time, but it could change. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard to develop a budget with that kind of uncertainty. Yeah, John?
We have a target date for them yet about it, know exactly what those projects.
Well,
Have
it better.
categories of things we've seen that.
Yeah, I think we have the general idea. We don't have the specifics yet. The challenge is that they've got to obligate, not spend, but obligate all the money by like August 30th, 1st or something like that. So they don't have a lot of time, and they don't have the final agreement with CMS at this point. So they're gonna, an obligate means you're under grants or contracts. I think that's what we're trying. It doesn't have to be spent, but it's gonna have to be, that's a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah.
In a very short amount of time. That's getting shorter every day. So, any other questions for Emily or comments from Emily? There'll be more to come. James is working on spreadsheets for us as we get, we have a few more committee letters that come in. The rest should be in today or tomorrow. We'll take some time to look at those this week. We have Chair Black coming in for healthcare on Thursday, and Chair Wood coming in. Maybe they're both on Thursday, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Is Chair Mahali coming in from housing at some point?
Yeah.
On Thursday's committee letter day. And as we see others come in, if there's some that you think that we ought to have the chair come in and talk about, let me know. I think some of them are fairly straightforward, and we don't, you can just talk with your portfolio folks about it. But if there's other big ones, just you can arrange for that.
Did you see that Chair Black is going to be at the State of
Yes.
the Union?
Yes. Wait. Senator Welch invited Alyssa Black to be his guest because of healthcare costs at the State of the Union tonight.
My goodness.
So it was in Digger this morning. I knew it last week. Yeah, but now she has.
She what?
She has to sit through it.
She's been invited.
She's been invited. So, yes, so we will have representation in the State of the Union, so we can see if they scan the audience, if we could look.
What's she looking, yeah.
She would be a guest of Senator Welch, so I don't know wherever he's sitting, she probably would be with him. So, yeah, pretty cool. Okay, I think that's it.